All right. I think we're live.
Maybe. Are we?
We'll see. And if not, we'll have a great conversation. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter if we're live or not. Um, so we're here at the Right of Boom conference in Tampa. And since we're getting started a few minutes early, I just wanted to take a few seconds to talk about that. Jason Slagle, my much, much smarter and much better looking bearded friend, has decided to join me. And it really came up because you and I were chatting about vulnerability disclosure programs. But I do want to take a second, and I want to talk about the Wild West Hackin Fest. She didn't hear me. It's okay. Wild West Hackin Fest behind us, May 4th, San Diego. It's going to be fantastic, 4th through 6th. I will probably try to find my way there. But it was nice of them to have a flyer. If you want to see it, I'll get a little closer. But they're going to do some really cool stuff. They're going to have a dinner on the Midway. It's going to be great. But today we're at the Right of Boom conference, which is a brand new cybersecurity conference for MSPs and practitioners in the security field that serve small to mid-sized business. Is that a fair
I think that's fair.
classification? Yeah. So, Jason, let me ask you this. We're going to get started whether people are on or not yet. If I was a company, if I'm a vendor, and I make code, and I use code of other people's to deliver my services and goods, what do you think I should be doing from a vulnerability disclosure program? And to set the stage for anybody that doesn't understand what that is, whenever you have weaknesses in something, let's think about your car, for example. When your car has a problem at some point, when they discover that the 2017 Thunderbird you're driving, I don't think they made a 17, it doesn't matter, but this car you're driving had a problem, they have a ability to disclose that. They have the ability to go back and fix it and then recall it. The duty, yeah.
Not an ability.
Looks like I'm going to be squinting a little bit. Can we speak up? How about this? Is this better?
We can do that.
It's hard to hear you through the beard. Somebody might have been trolling me, though. I'm not sure, but can you guys hear us okay now? Go ahead and comment if you can. Okay, we'll get to pre-clipping levels here.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
It might have been a troll. The point was, when we have vulnerability disclosures. Touche. That's great. All right, I'm not going to lean up every time. Yeah. I've got short eyes, guys. Oh, Lord.
Uh-oh. Trouble.
Oh, God.
Hey, did y'all hear?
No, what?
Did you hear?
What?
Endpoint visibility is here. Do you know who has endpoint visibility?
This is the first time I've heard this on social media.
What? This is the first time? No way.
I swear to God.
Absolutely not. Endpoint visibility is here with LionGuard, y'all. LionGuard.com.
Okay, I'm lying. I may have heard this like 700.9 times. You might earn yourself a position in taking care of our old eyes and reading those comments for me so I can post them.
Okay. Yeah. I second that. Can you?
Great before and after. Oh, somebody was messing with me. You sorry bastards. Good for you.
Endpoint visibility.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Oh, you missed. You throw as good as me. Oh, that's funny. So the point though is that, and I kind of let's distill it, is that if I'm a vendor and I have, vulnerabilities, how do I set up and have an actual program? What is your best case? Like, what would you define as the right answer for a vendor?
So, I mean, to me, it comes down to transparency, right? So, if the vulnerability existed, as the partner, I don't know whether or not I was actually exploited by it or vulnerable to it or what happened if I don't know about it and hear about it. So, I realize that not everyone is transparent about it and probably never will be, right? But I mean, to me, that's the gold standard, right? Is that we need to publicly talk about when people get things wrong, because people get things wrong, right? It's everyone. I think
we are human.
Says everyone oops, right? It's like you're making that joke on everyone poops. If I see a vendor out there that has like literally no security stuff listed, I just assume it's very insecure and they're just not talking about it.
Right. Or that they're just so immature that they don't even think about the impact of the data they collect and the things that they're touching, and in that way. And, it's funny because you talk about vulnerabilities and people talk about one of their fears. And you said this well. At PAX 8, when I am trying to advise, the only two things I talk about when you're trying to discover how you're going to handle these vulnerabilities is be humble and be transparent. Right? And a lot of people, there's legal aspects and there's these things, but I'll take you one simple example from the corporate world. How many vulnerabilities has Palo Alto had in the last 2 years? and Pulse VPN.
Yeah.
And like there's thousands of them, and they read them every week, and people talk about them. And guess what? Their stock prices do okay.
Yeah,
they make money.
100%.
They sell product. Yeah. And for the conversation, in my mind, it's like someone has a vulnerability they find. If a threat actor finds that vulnerability, right? If they're enumerating log4j and they happen to realize that the GenD device naming aspect can be used to go to an LDAP server, and then they start working on that, they can start attacking. And to your point, as an MSP, you don't know if they have.
Yeah.
Unless you have the detailed information, the vulnerability feeds, the information of that kind of stuff. So where have you seen it going wrong? No names.
No, I won't name names.
No names, but what are the bad things?
I mean, we have some of the bigger vendors in our space, I feel like, often aren't as transparent as they could be about it. I mean, I see cases with some vendors where they'll release a security update, right? But it won't be called out. You have to go to their trust site to know that this new version of the software you're installing is
it becomes a proactive thing on you to do constantly,
right? Like it's not in the release notes. Like how are security things not in your release notes, right? I mean, you get other vendors that they just don't talk about it, right? It's they're a lot of these software packages are big in our space, are big, complex monsters built out of a ton of components. Those components might have vulnerabilities, and even if they don't, right, these are big, complex things. The thought that every line of code is going to be perfect is just not a thing.
What's funny is there either are or aren't consuming from that upline code vulnerability feeds, right? So they might still be using, let's just say I may have found Chrome 57 in one of the thick binaries, right? And Chrome 57 had 2,700 vulnerabilities known to me at that time. And when I asked the vendor about this, because I personally went into this vendor and said, hey, I can't move forward with this. I have Chrome 57 running on my machines, and that's failing. And their answer was, well, but we're using a software package for our financial connection that doesn't update that anymore. And we can't go any further past it. And I think I guess we're kind of talking about the whole problem, right? You have poor coding practices. You have reliance with no software bill of goods, if you will, but specifically on the vulnerability disclosure. So MSPs notice a weird thing with authentication, right? And I've reported a vulnerability once, right? It was through Kyle, and he helped me out with it. But, you find this vulnerability, you find this problem, and you just simply care enough to tell the vendor, this is a problem, right? How's that received?
Depends on the vendor. Right. There are vendors that you just will literally never hear anything back from. There are vendors that you hear back from, and they may or may not fix it. There are vendors still, and I cringe to say this, that get legally towards you, right? In fact,
just recently
I had a thinly veiled threats of litigation because
if I lose any money because of this, I'm going to sue you.
I mean, it's
guess what? You're going to lose money suing me too.
I don't understand. So me personally, if I disclose, I start a timer. Right?
Okay.
If I don't hear
Can
back
I ask
from you,
what that timer is?
90 days.
90 days.
90 days.
For the first talk back or for fix?
No. So once we're talking, right, everything's up for negotiation, right? And everything, and I don't want to be a thing I found to get all the MSPs in the world popped, right? Like I don't want that to be a thing. But if you're not going to answer me in 90 days, then I will go public with it, because I promise you, and we were talking about this before we started here, as soon as it's public, it gets fixed. With 100% certainty, as soon as it's public.
Right.
Even if they're ignoring
you. Now, they
you,
might sue you, or they might do the crap or try to legal, but it does get fixed.
It 100% gets fixed, right? So I kind of have this thing for being like a jerk to people and vendors.
I've never heard that, actually.
And I do it.
I love you though.
But I'm actually a really reasonable guy, right? Like the jerk in public is because it's effective, right? It's like at some point or another, like I am having conversations.
Yeah, like the Chrome 57 still exists. Yeah. And I'm not naming that name on that vendor, but it still exists, right? And I have never made it public.
Are they? I mean, are they?
Now trouble's walking up here. How do you feel about vulnerability disclosure programs, Wes Spencer?
We don't quite have enough of them around, I can tell you that much. What are we talking about?
Vulnerability disclosure programs.
We were talking about the different methodologies of vulnerability disclosure programs and vendors today and how they kind of treat vulnerabilities when private versus when public. Like, kind of the Jason Slagle being a jerk comment came up.
Yeah.
A jerk? You?
But I'm not a jerk. I'm only a jerk publicly because it works.
What do I call you? Do you remember?
Uh-oh, this is good.
I call you a truth speaker. I call him a truth speaker.
Like, what all is
because what you do a good job of is forcing people, no matter who they are, into doing the right thing and speaking the truth when the truth needs to be spoken. There's not a lot of people out there that are like that.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I do have I have people that are afraid to engage some of these vendors because they're afraid of legal blowback. What is it?
Say? Good enough. Said acknowledgement should be ASAP. Communication is not.
100%.
Right? But I was asking your timer.
We were talking. So when I report, I put a vendor on a timer immediately, 90 days. If I don't hear from you in 90 days, it's going public. Once it comes out, we'll negotiate. Right? Like, you need time to fix it. I totally get that. Yeah. Right? Like, but if I don't I have found that if I start the communications with this will be disclosed publicly in 90 days, if not acknowledged, 100% of the time I get an answer.
Yeah.
Right. Like, if I don't do that, half the time you don't.
Yeah. And then they're going to wait on it. Yeah. I agree. And, last night you and I were talking about that crypto thing that came out, and there's
$3.6 billion.
Isn't that crazy?
It's nuts.
And I covered one that happened before that with it was crypto.com.
Yeah.
And that was a good example of one that, like, they waited too long, and then they made some incorrect statements of what they said happened and didn't happen.
Yeah.
You know what? The funny thing is, logs don't lie.
Right.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
No logs tell nothing.
Yeah, that's true too. That's true too. And so I think when even that comment that I just read right there that you said, disclose as soon as possible.
Yeah.
You do need to, because if you don't,
Yeah.
and the logs are not going to lie.
Yeah.
Right.
Now we do need to be careful and let's be accurate. Let's have the right information.
Yes.
Yep.
But yes, and I think putting those 90 days or whatever the arbitrary number is,
90 is the industry standard, right?
Yes.
So,
and if you've got to put some teeth behind it.
yeah.
If you were designing a program, so you were a vendor, Wes, you made the newest widget in the world. Let's call it Urch. We're going to call it Urch.
I like Urch.
Urch is a cool name.
Urch-Pay,
I love it. It's beautiful, like a bird. So let's call it Urch, and you're starting Urch. Do you do an internal vuln program? Do you do an external that someone else is managing so that you have the trust? Or do you do no program and just take the calls as they come so that you don't wrap rules around it?
I like that. I think this is an evolving discussion. I can say in the early days at Perch, it was nothing. Had something happen,
but good people that are willing to take the call and fix stuff, right?
Yes, we're also not afraid to say, "Whoa, there's something here we've got to go fix and correct," right? And also, small, young, hungry companies are going to have the nimble ability to correct something much quicker.
Yeah,
for sure.
Earlier code base.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And two, you don't have to worry about massive shareholders being so worried about what's the public perception. Just fix it and move on. A good example of this, Huntress published one, a while back from a small mistake, but they were quick to publish it. Of their own, right. Yeah. Very quick to publish it because they could and because they knew they should and because, let's be honest, it was easy for them to do that. And I think big companies can learn from all that. So going back to answer your question, we started with nothing. Would I start with nothing today? I definitely wouldn't outsource it yet because if it's a brand new startup, the money's not there, right? But I think you can do a good job of disclosing on your website, here's how we handle this. If you have something to share, security and then you just handle that, as it comes in because you're going to have the leeway and capability.
You have to have security it has to exist everywhere, right? And then I would recommend security.txt, right? The well-known security text
and
file.
And just use that as your delivery mechanism to say, here's what I want you to do. Here's how you
correct.
contact
me. It's so, I mean, where the program helps me is like, what is in and out of scope? What am I allowed to poke at without you coming at me legally?
What's going to cripple my infrastructure for you testing with your fuzz, right? Versus not.
I mean, one of the big vendors, right, like in our space, I went and ran DNS dumpster on one of their domains, and oh my God, it was the amount of stuff that was returned back.
I had the same horror using cert.sh on a few of those.
Yeah, right. So cert.sh or a DNS dumpster, you run a mass, right? If you're using your Cali box, but you you come back with this huge attack surface. And so which of these, so I come across an open on the internet identity provider box, right? That looks like it might have a vulnerability in it.
It turns out it's actually their what do you call it? Honeypot, right?
Yeah.
Like it's actually really a honeypot.
It could be, but is that in or out of scope, right? Am I allowed to poke that, right? Like, or are you going to come swinging at me because I poked it and it's out of scope? Like, define the rules of engagement.
The only problem with the scope conversation in my mind is none of the threat actors give a shit about scope.
Yes,
like that's
100%.
the at least perfect pure argument.
Yeah,
right? Like,
it is. I agree with that.
It's like setting rules of engagement, but like in war, if I win, I'm effective in my rules of engagement.
Well, I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they were talking about like how to get better, and I'm like, winning is easy. You just have to be the best.
Yeah, right. Or the most or flexible on your
morals.
So,
the threat actors, you're right, they don't care, but there's a lot of interesting side things, right? Like denial of service, right?
Yeah.
It's like there are obviously you don't want a denial of service offender.
Especially if they have a paid denial of service, you're going to kick them over to as you're doing that and create actual cost.
Now everyone's getting the Cloudflare pop up.
Yeah, type in this 7 codes to tell me if you're actually a real person.
The scope thing is nice to know, right? But I do agree with you that in theory everything should be in scope, but in practice, I'm not sure that we can put everything in scope.
Right there. Sorry, we got enough wide frame.
Yeah, we got to work the mic
this
out.
way, one mic that way. Everybody can still hear us. Okay.
Hopefully so.
They're. But also how to report, right? Like, who do I contact? What kind of response time can I expect, right? Like
whether or not there's a non-disclosure agreement. MSP, that conversation that triggered you and got us on this path.
So we can go there in a minute, but I want those things defined for every company, right? And the effort to do that, I agree with you that until you're looking to do a bounty program, maybe you don't want to use a third party.
That's a fair way to delineate.
Yeah.
If you're not going to try to actually incur by paying and saying I have a public bug bounty program, then that would be where you might privatize that versus externalizing.
But now with the whole DIVD thing, assuming they're effective at doing what I think they're going to be effective at, there's less incentive for a lot of these small vendors to run a bounty program because DIVD is willing to pay the bounties. So,
and you might be making sure that it's fair to the person that's reporting it. The challenge I have, and this is John Murchison, he's not here, but to call his name, John Murchison has this belief that, the challenge with doing a bug bounty program or doing a public disclosure program or doing those things, then it makes it easier for the threat actors and it'll incur more people that are, not necessarily gray hat, but maybe more black hat to poke at your system. I think if it's in public, it's in scope. Somebody said that just a minute ago. I think it was Matthias, but.
I'll say the same thing to you I said to you earlier when we were talking about it. That is the MSP equivalent of running RDP on 3390, right? Like the fact that we don't want bad actors to come look at our stuff. Guess what? This industry is huge and the payouts are giant. They're already looking at your stuff.
Yeah, 100%.
So, let some up and coming security researcher poke at your stuff, right? Because they want to make a name for themselves or because they need a little bit extra money to fund their TryHackMe subscription,
and
right?
The way I see it is I want during the time period in which I'm assessing as a vendor how I'm going to fix it to be under NDA. After that, 100%. Don't give a fuck.
So
wait, we're on live. I get one of those. That
was your one.
Somehow I haven't done it yet, which is shocking.
First to go to the party.
I think the other thing too that's good about them, we've talked about this a little bit, but it demonstrates a fair amount of transparency. And I prove to you that I care because I have a process for this.
Yeah.
And you're humble enough to have the transparency.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. And I think where you see companies get themselves in a whole world of trouble, we see this over and over and over, is if they don't have a bug bounty program, they don't have the formality behind it to handle it in the right way.
Nor the operational formality internally to get that in the next sprint or in the next code base or in the next things.
Security issues, I think, should 100% of the time or most of the time be out of cycle releases, right? It's like, I don't need to wait. Like, this doesn't need to wait because you got the next 2 releases locked in.
Right.
It doesn't need to wait 3 months until your third release because you're releasing monthly. Like, that's silly.
Yeah.
Right. So.
And I did touch on this in long form with Datto last Beard Banter.
Yeah.
And actually had the conversation. And I liked some of the points he was making around, making sure that you incentivize the people that are product management to include security as part of their score, right? And say, okay, you can push off this security thing one time, but if you do, you got to kill 2 more in your back queue in order to do that, right? So like giving them operations to still succeed and be paid and have that be part of their bonus structure to actually organize that. But in the same breath, if you have an out-of-band team that can do that, I think the problem is the context that gets lost.
You know, one of the things we did at Perch, and this is, I'll call his name out because he deserves credit for it, is Charles Burgess.
Okay.
Charles did something really cool at Perch. He pitched to the entire team, hey, we want to create this sprint defense, sprint offense framework for our devs. And so when we're going through sprint cycles, certain devs come off of sprint offense where they're building features, they're killing the roadmap, into whatever comes up, we're going to defend the offense team that's building features, and we're going to protect when a bug comes up, if it's something like this that causes you to have out of band,
if it's
rush to fix.
Log4j, let's say.
Yeah, and I think I'd never really thought about DevOps like that before, and we moved to it, and it worked really well. And so sometimes we'd have a big sprint.
Did it shift a lot?
Yeah, so I was just going to say, I think it depended on what was in the sprint. If it was a massive, colossal thing, we might just have 2 on defense.
Yeah.
If we finished a bunch of stuff, and we're just going to kind of finish a few bugs on the sprint and just whatever, then we might put 4 or 5 into it. And the cool thing is when you're not handling something that actively comes up for the defense team, then they just get to go quash bugs or whatever they want to go after.
Yeah.
But you have a team dedicated to it. I'd never seen anyone do that before. It worked really well for Perch.
I think that's really important to have. I'm of the mindset, software development wise, that bugs come.
You'll see the HR department when I get back.
Critical bugs come first, right? Like we shouldn't be adding features when critical bugs
criticality and risk should be part of the conversation, right? Like, has to be. And I think part of the problem is even at PAX 8, there's some actually well-known humans out here that have sent in bugs that weren't bugs. They were like, hey, your security.txt points to some. They were hygienic, right? They had not much risk. They were accurate statements. They just weren't actionable directly at that time. It didn't matter that much. And so I get that this is a bit of an immature industry. I think. And I think that's part of this as well, is the security research itself, the pay structure for how one gets funded in that world.
So, I would challenge vendors to do this, right? So we're at a trade show here.
Yep.
These vendors are spending a crap ton of money on junk they're giving away. What?
No, this is me agreeing with
Okay.
I have eyes that point 2 different directions. So when I really want to agree, I'm going to point it.
I thought I swore. So you're spending so much money on stuff here, right? Like, maybe if you put some of the money that you're going to pay the PR team after you have a critical bug into the things before you have a critical bug, you wouldn't have a critical bug, right? Yeah. So once these things go public, they'll spend millions of dollars defending them, right? And trying to recover from their reputational loss of it. That a fraction of that money could be used to fund a program that may find those bugs before they are found by a threat.
And the other argument I'll make for a vendor, this is maybe I'm being wrong here, and y'all can tell me. Right now, the only legislative or prosecutorial answer right now around this is reasonable person. If I have a bug bounty program where I can show me getting bugs, quashing bugs, and healthily responding with a very transparent and humble belief, 12 people in a jury probably going to see that as at least reasonable person, right? Like, but if I, on the other side, say, all bugs are reported, we stick them in Johnny's email box, it never goes anywhere further, let's call Johnny whoever, you know who Johnny is in my mind, right? Where it just comes in, people are being quashed by just being told, we'll get to you. Yeah. That's not very defensible.
No, it's
right?
not.
That doesn't look good in front of 12 peers that are talking about this.
Yeah. So the magic words that I've been using with some vendors lately is, are you going to compensate me if I get hit because of this, right? And that usually can get wheels turning. You were privy to some of those conversations I had with.
It forces them to think about the things they need to think about, which are, what does the litigation look like? Should that come up? And I think those are healthy things to force you into the precursor to this. And if I might make an analogy here,
I love it.
I don't mean to get too political. Maybe I don't mean to get political at all, but I think a lot of this can, you look at what's happening like policing here in the U.S.
Yeah. Yep.
There's a correlation here to a lesser degree, but like where we're going as a nation takes some time for us to be like, yeah, we've done some things wrong in the past, and we need to fix some of this, and we've got to course correct. And it doesn't happen automatically; it takes some work. And I think when you look at vulnerability, like you look at where we're at today compared to 4 or 5 years ago,
100% way better.
You guys remember the Uber CISO and the Uber CEO with their very first breach? I mean, like total malicious cover up. I don't know if you guys remember that. Totally malicious. Yeah. There was rumor they're going to be indicted. They weren't. Like from that scale to where we're at today, I'm glad that we've moved the needle.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, to be fair, the vendors in our space are also mostly improving.
Yeah.
Right. Like the responsiveness you get, CISOs are a thing now, right? Like, and some of them
External
are very,
CISOs.
External. The one that doesn't have to have his resume in his back pocket
fantastic.
all the time.
It does anyway.
Yeah.
So things are getting better. There are still some vendors who, again, I won't name because we're not going to do that
this
here.
Is my show. I don't like that.
That just don't engage with the community, right? And I think it's unfortunate. I think eventually,
it's endearing to engage with the community, though. If I'm a security researcher or someone that has some thoughts and I don't like what you're doing, and you take it humbly and you tell me what you can do about it and how you can. Like, I'm okay with that. Like, I know you didn't get it. It's kind of back to your policing. There are endemic things that have been part of our society, right? Women didn't vote until not too long ago.
Yeah.
And as we start to correct those, there's still the long tail of that correction that exists.
Yeah.
And I'm not an advocate for stopping business. I'm not an advocate for dropping and saying, oh, you've got to rebuild. This is all done. No, I understand as pragmatists that we have to go forward from this. But it is definitely very immature in the SMB space. And I think it correlates to they've had a very, very immature consumer.
Yeah,
if you're a company making a product and you have an immature consumer, you know what's good because you're the only person that's judging good.
I mean, I also think that, we have a young, hungry industry that with, I'm just going to say it, stupid multipliers that exit, right? So there's a lot of companies out there, right, that like security doesn't make you money, right? So, build. We'll think about it later, right? And then they either don't think about it or they just get bought and they exit, right? And that stuff.
So I'm seeing change in that, which is good. A case in point, especially in healthcare. Like healthcare, because they've so rightly defined what EPHI is and the ramifications of that post-acquisition. So we have a very large healthcare org that I've worked with, like literally 200,000 employees, that's buying hospitals left and right. And they've gotten into multiple post-acquisition litigation of an active threat, and now you have lawyers that come together and point the fingers, and it gets to be a nightmare because the contracts are not always clear of what happens from a security event that we can or maybe can't prove happened before the acquisition is complete. And they're like, this is so much of a mess for us, we're never doing this again. So they baked finally they've baked security into the M&A process.
As far as the legal ramifications of the existing security,
both in terms of we won't complete the acquisition until we're sure. And we all know what sure means, right? But reasonable doubt. We're going to put a lot of controls in there to make sure, and we're going to have agreement to say, if we can demonstrate from log data that an incident did occur before this acquisition, that is coming out of your pocket.
We baked in a gross negligence clause in our acquisition of an MSP, and I think it goes back to that prosecutorial challenge. We went to go act on it because we did lose $1 million. It was actually the one moment I could think about and cry on command, right? If I was going to be an actor, I would think about that breach and cry. Easy, right? Almost there. Sorry, I got there. But, as we thought about that, we went back afterwards and said, okay, we want to try to prove the gross negligence clause. We want to enact on the insurance. We spent almost 2 years chasing the insurance aspect of that. And even though it was plain and simple in there, but I think you're right on the healthcare side. You have a much more robust and built-in penalty phase, right? You have a cost. I'm going to have to pay for credit monitoring for that person. I'm going to have to do a notification that's meaningful, and I'm going to have to pay for that. And that's $5.7 million out of this cost, and that makes my ROI another 13 months farther than where I was going to be on this acquisition. And I think that's what we don't have in somebody that makes widget number 7 for MSP number 43, right? And I think that's part of the challenge that we have today. But if we wanted to give any parting advice, I don't want to go too much further than our allotted time, and I obviously have a date with the HR department. But that's why this is my personal show, and it doesn't express the visions and opinions of Hack8 themselves. But if you guys had parting thoughts, what would your advice to any vendor that has nothing yet? They're the ones that would have taken Jason's call and said, okay, Jason, thanks, see you.
So I'll plug a thing I'm working on with Ray. We're trying to build a workshop to help vendors through that process a little bit, right? My advice would be do something, right? Like just start with a page. Security.text is a good way to do it. Make sure security ad exists, right? Make sure that if somebody finds something, they have a way to bring it to you. That's the start. Like just start there.
Yeah. But I mean, are you going to, just to dig into that for just a second, are you planning on walking through the other operational aspects of this? So first there's the report. How do we receive it?
Yes.
How do we deal with it? How do we report it? How do we give reward?
Yeah.
Are you walking through each of those segments?
I wasn't necessarily planning to talk about the bounty piece of it, but I am planning on what I think notification. And I'm going to try to give options. I am an opinionated guy. No. So I will call out what I think is the best option, but I think it's
what's right for you.
Yeah. But I'm going to try to lay out all the options, right? Like, we can have the NDA discussion, right? Yep. Like I'm not a fan, but I understand why people do it. So I'll talk about that. I'll talk about the process, how you should communicate back with the reporter, right? And then I'll talk about disclosure, right? Like this is so much better when I've submitted stuff, when I can disclose with the vendor. Yeah, it's way better.
And how much more sticky are you as a consumer of their product if they let you get up on stage and say, I care enough about you and me and all these other people here that I reported this like that? Yeah, that is PR. That is driving forward your career, and I don't hate anybody for that conversation, right? Wes, any brilliant parting thoughts for us?
There's nothing I can add that you didn't already say. I was just going to say, I think now is the time to engage the community. Right, if you're a MSP vendor and you're not security, you're not building a security product, you don't have a lot of security in-house talent, maybe zero. This is why the community exists. This is why we three are sitting here together. This is why we're all here at Right Boom. This is why I think almost all of the good guys in security will take a call and say, 100%. Yeah, here's what I think. Here's what you should do. I would start making those connections and be humble enough to just go and ask people for things you don't know about. Right? Yeah. That's what open the conversations.
That's a life lesson, not just a vulnerability discussion lesson. Yeah. Right? Just be humble and understand that there's more to learn. But I will say, I hadn't thought about it like this, but you're right. If I look back 4 or 5 years ago and I'm in the same boat and the same level of disclosure, it's definitely better.
Something's wrong.
Yeah, it's definitely better, and I think we're heading towards the right way.
Yeah, I thought you meant if I hadn't changed.
No, you're right. It would have been really bad. Yeah. But no, I'm just saying I hadn't. It actually hadn't dawned on me that even though I sit here in this space where we're frustrated about it, it is better.
It's 100% better.
Good majority of companies. Yeah. Huntress, I'll give them a great shout out. They're fantastic.
They're pushing.
Fantastic.
Those companies are pushing the rest of the industry forward, and vendors are starting to ask how we do this. The smaller ones. Yeah. And that's what I would. That's what I want to see.
A deeper dive with DIVD in a week and a half to actually get much more into. Can we help you build the program? Okay. As well, so that we can actually add some other controls.
Are you on the Tuesday thing?
No. Okay. No, this is one some private from one entity to another entity named Rax 8. And potentially BIVD. Okay. Thank you guys for all tuning in. Jason, I want to ask one thing. If they want to reach out to you as a vendor watching this and participate with you, either help you or be part of that class, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Just ping me on LinkedIn.
Okay. So Jason Slagle, a.k.a. Jason McGee today. Only because there are no identification controls for getting your badge at the front desk for this. Thank you guys so much. See you all later.